Welcome to Pro Mindset Podcast today. This is Craig Domann, your host. I've got a special guest today, JR Martinez. JR, I got to give you the rundown on JR. This guy does it all. This guy is a Dancing with the Stars winner. So he's got some rhythm. He's got some moves. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's a motivational speaker. He's an actor. He's been on a sitcom. He's got his own podcast. He's a veteran. He's a dad. He wears lots of hats. He's a softball coach. JR, welcome to Pro Mindset today.
I appreciate you for having me on, man.
Holy smokes, man.
When you lead with the dancing and people talk about dancing and people are like, man, this dude can actually get down. I'm like, listen, when you're raised by a single mother, you got no other choice, man, but to have some rhythm. I had to be her dance partner as a kid. And then I got older and I figured out that girls like guys that had a little bit of rhythm. So then I took it a little bit more seriously. But it was a fun time, man.
Well, you know what, JR, we are a lot alike in a lot of ways, but that's one way we're not alike. I have no rhythm.
Hey, man, dance doesn't have to look one way. I mean, dance is what you feel, what makes you feel good, what makes you happy, and what makes you vibe, that gets you up and gets you moving. That's all dance really is. It's just some of us have a different ability to sort of do a certain style of dance. But for the most part, man, I was always the guy before I went to that show. I was always the guy that would be out with friends and I'd get a circle going and I'd pull people into the circle and hype them up like, go, oh. And people would start, you got that person that just starts doing the wildest stuff. And you're like, what are they doing? But I guarantee you, the trained professional dancer tries to do those same moves and they can't because it's unique to each individual. And as long as you feel it, as long as you own it, man, you can get a whole room moving and vibing with it, which is the beauty of dance, to be honest. So I'm sure you got something in you, man, that we can get out of you.
I think so, but I think it might have skipped generations. My kids got great moves, but I think the problem is the missing component was the feeling and the owning. Okay, so I think I was too conscientious of what people might think instead of just letting it go.
Yeah,
and that's, you know what, in life you go a lot farther when you just let it go, be yourself, and don't care to whatever's about what people think.
Oh boy, but that was a lesson I had to learn, and I don't want to jump ahead here, but at 19 years old, when your world is turned upside down, and as I like to tell people, your identity is taken away from you, meaning the identity of me being in the military was taken away from me. The identity, my appearance that I had known for 19 years of my life was taken away from me. I mean, and then you get propelled and pushed back into this, society that is all based on image. How do you look? And people, as much as you would like to believe that people have etiquette or understand how to, approach somebody or be around somebody that looks different, they don't. And people double take, they stare, they make you look awkward. I mean, kids are the best, though. I love kids. I have fun with kids, man. Kids are so blunt and straight up, and they're like, what happened to your ear? Where's your ear? Like, I had this little kid coming up to me, and it was just like, kids you just roll with, but the adults you learn to have a little fun with and sort of give them a hard time. And, but I had to learn that early on. I put so much emphasis on how people looked at me, how people, acted around me. And then it got to a point in my life where I was like, am I always going to be giving other people power to control the way that I navigate this space that we're both sharing together? And what I started doing, and I'm a big proponent of, especially as a male, as a man, somebody that was in the military, and vulnerability is a big word for me, and it's something that I've really have dove into, have really leaned into, have really understood what it feels like, not just understand the definition of it. And the way that I've got the confidence that I have today is honestly, man, just little moments over the last 21 years since that fateful day, little moments where I've seen, people embrace me, people accept me. And I just take all these little moments, man, and I just focus on them. I practice gratitude. I put them all together. And eventually I have a foundation where I'm like, man, I don't care what anybody thinks about me. I don't care what anybody says about me. I am who I am. Because if I was the most handsome dude on the planet, guess what? Somebody would still have something to say about that. And so might as well own and embrace and accept who you are. And guess what? And I still feel like I'm the most handsome dude in the world. So what's up with that?
All that matters is what you think, JR.
That's
So we
it, man.
have some people that are watching this on YouTube, and we have others that are
Oh, no
listening to
way.
this. Yeah. So here's the thing: they can't see you. So you got to share with people what happened on that fateful day. You were in the military. You obviously
Yeah.
had an accident. What does 34% mean to you? What does 33, the number 33, mean to you? And what do you look like now compared to what you used to look like that's different?
Oh man. So let me tell you something. So I joined the Army after high school. There was a lot of reasons why I decided to join. 9/11 was part of it. I graduated after 9/11. It was also an opportunity for me to travel, see the world. The military was going to give me an opportunity to get money for college. It was just a win-win all across the board for me at that time. And I, typical kid, joined the military, and I was like, I want to be in it. If I'm only going to do 3 years, and that was my intention, only 3 years, I want to be in it. And so I joined as an infantryman, and I go out to basic training for 3 months. I graduate from basic training. I'm assigned to my unit, which was the 101st out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And man, after 2 months of being in that unit, I found myself on a plane going to combat at the age of 19 years old. I mean, I had no extensive training, no experience whatsoever. And the biggest thing that I had to do was just look around and rely on the people in my unit, the guys that did have that training, the guys that have been in the military longer, that have been able to travel and see the world. And it was tough. I mean, it was an adjustment. I mean, you have to recalibrate your mind from being a civilian kid to now being a man in a combat zone and think from a combat strategic standpoint. And that is very difficult to wrap your head around. I mean, just think about yourself at 19 years old and just sort of the stage that you were in and just trying to figure out if you went to college or if you got a job. Like there's that curve that you got to go through. And for me, it was just more accelerated because it's combat, and every day, every moment matters because it can either cause you your life or the people in your unit's life. And again, everything happens quick for me. So a month into my deployment, just a few days shy of actually being a month, I'm driving a Humvee through a city called Karbala with 3 other troops in a Humvee. I ran over a roadside bomb. I'm trapped inside. They're thrown out of the vehicle. It's engulfed in flames. I'm screaming and yelling. I'm conscious for 5 minutes, and I really think I'm going to die. 19 years old, I start thinking to myself, my life is going to end. It's going to end in this way. And I started kind of making peace with that. But, I have to make mention that, when people ask me, how did you overcome that? How did you continue to fight and scream and hang on versus let go, which my body frequently wanted to do? And you can't ignore that there were 19 years of life experiences, even though they don't measure up to this big moment. There were all these experiences that I had that were giving me the tools and giving me the belief that all I had to do was just show up and hang on. And I did. And 5 minutes later, I was pulled out of the Humvee, started the medevac process. I ended up in San Antonio, Texas. And 3 weeks later, I came out of my medical induced coma and literally saw my face and my body for the first time. And so that percentage you referenced earlier is 3rd-degree burns on my face, 3rd-degree burns on my head, 3rd-degree burns on my hands, my arms, part of my back, part of my legs, some 2nd-degree burns in other areas. But, I mean, listen, I could, at the time it was obviously clearly one of the most difficult things I've ever navigated. And but the biggest thing at the time that was threatening whether I was going to survive was not the exterior, was not the damage to my body. It was the fact that I inhaled smoke from the fire, that I had a lacerated liver, I had broken ribs, and I inhaled so much smoke. And I think for me, that's just more deeper meaning, just, how the surface can be what it is, and that can, look a certain way. But it's the interior, it's the inside stuff that you really got to lean in and deal with and pay attention to, because that's the stuff that could really hurt you long term.
JR, thank you very much for serving our country.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you for saying that. I appreciate that.
You went from shock to more shock. When you went into combat, that was a shock to your system. There was not a long runway. That was like a helicopter. You took off, okay? And then you find yourself waking up from a coma, not probably really remembering what happened.
Yeah.
Let's take our audience to the point in time where you're in the hospital in San Antonio, and you realized you were different, that you're living and that you're alive, but you're not the same on the outside.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
Everybody was, when I came out of my medical induced coma, I vividly remember as if it was this morning, last night, last week. I mean, I remember it. And I remember laying in my hospital bed and I kept hearing this voice say, Martinez, Martinez, if you can hear me, open your eyes. And I remember I slowly opened my eyes and the hospital light was right above my bed and it startled me. And so I closed my eyes and the voice said, it's okay, take your time. And I slowly opened my eyes and I'm laying there and he says, we're going to sit you up. And when we sit you up, we're going to pull a tube out. And when we pull the tube out, we need you to cough, right? So this is me being intubated. So they sit me up, and as I sit up and they're pulling the tube out, I can see people in the room, and there are a bunch of strangers all wearing green scrubs. And of course, my mother was there. And everyone just like has this look of like relief. The tube is out, I'm coughing, and they lay me back down, and he's asking me questions. Do you know where you are? Of course, the answer is no. So he tells me, do you remember what happened to you? And I said, kind of vaguely. He's okay. Let me fill in the gaps for you. And everyone is so excited because I'm now breathing on my own. I'm not needing a machine to keep me alive. Now, there were two reasons for the reason that I was intubated. One was because of also the damage, right, that I had referenced earlier, but it was also because my body was going through a stage of shock. So when I was injured, I was fighting off a lot of the medical team that was trying to treat me. And I was telling them, actually, I was sitting up in country and telling them, I'm fine, I'm good, let me go back. And so they realized, listen, he's using so much energy because his body's going through what it's going through. We need to put him down so we can conserve that energy because this is going to be a long road to recovery. And if he is going to survive, because it was a big question, is he going to survive? He's going to need this energy. So I just remember like feeling and seeing people's reaction, like excited that I was alive and I was breathing on my own. And the doctor said, hey, man, I'm going to let you rest. I'll come in tomorrow morning and talk to you about the plan that we have for you. And literally, as promised, he walked in. We've all been in the hospital and doctors come in top of the morning. They do their rounds and they mean business. And he comes in and he says, listen, by now you've noticed you can't feed yourself. You can't bathe yourself. You can't walk. You can't do anything by yourself, but don't worry. We have a team that's going to do that for you and we'll get you back there. And I really didn't process that because my mind immediately went to, okay, so when am I getting out? And when am I going back to join my unit to finish my deployment? That was my mindset. And that's not synonymous to me. I mean, that's something that a lot of service members, ask that question when they find themselves in the same predicament. And that's when the first bombshell was dropped on me when he told me that I wasn't going to be allowed to stay in the Army. I was going to be discharged because I could no longer do the job that I did in the military. As you can imagine, that was hard because, again, that was becoming part of my identity. And now that was taken away from me. I was introduced to this concept of service that started to become my purpose. And I fell in love with it. And now they were stripping that away from me. Also, there was the frustrations, right? Every day of like, what do you mean I can't feed myself? Then it started really to process. What do you mean I can't walk? And the more I started to do occupational therapy and they would get me out of my bed and I would have nurses assisting me on either side that helping me walk in my ICU room because I wasn't allowed to leave my room. And I could only do maybe half a lap for the first couple of weeks. And then it turned into a lap of my little small, maybe 300-400 square foot home, room. That's it. And then, listen, man, any burn survivor will tell you this. Although the moment that caused their injury was difficult, was painful, was traumatic in its own way, almost every burn survivor will validate this point that the most difficult part of the recovery process is when they take you to the shower. Because, and not to get too graphic for your listeners, your viewers, but essentially like you got dead skin on your body, the area that's damaged, that's affected, and they have to go and they have to clean that in order for when they do grafts and when they do ointments and dressings and everything in order for that area to heal. And listen, we underestimate what the skin actually does for us until we don't have it anymore. And I mean, you can make a grown the toughest person you know in your life right now, think of that individual, even if it's yourself, and you say, I guarantee you that person in that setting is going to cry, is going to scream, is going to yell, because it's incredibly painful. And I remember going through this routine for the first week of my recovery. And one day when they rolled me back into my room, I just kept saying to myself, why does it hurt so much when they touch my face? I don't understand. And I hadn't seen my body at that point. I mean, even my hands, I mean, they were always bandaged, and I didn't have a lot of range of motion, a lot of mobility. So it's not like I can raise my arms up and look at them. It's not like I can actually sit up. Everything I did, I needed someone to help me or necessarily do it for me. And I remember when I went back into my ICU room after the shower, I asked the nurse, Mike, if I could see my face. And he was like, no, not now, buddy. You know, just kind of a little dismissive, but trying to keep the energy high. No, not now, buddy. You got plenty of time, plenty of surgeries. You're good. And I just insisted. And it wasn't a request anymore. It became a demand. And he honored that. And he put a mirror in front of me, and I saw my face. That's all I saw. And that's all I needed to see. And man, listen, I became angry, and I became resentful. I became bitter. I became any word you can possibly think of. But here's the thing what that triggered, with the action that it triggered, all those emotions, is that it caused me every day to go down, dig myself deeper into this hole, this really dark foxhole of, no one's ever going to love me. No one's ever going to be able to walk down the same sidewalk with me. I'm never going to be able to have a job. I'm 19 years old. No one's going to want to date me, let alone no one's going to want to marry me or have kids with me. And I'm just spending all my days just going into this space, and literally like a couple of weeks where I didn't even speak to anybody, including my mother. And the thing is everybody was so happy, including my mother, that I was alive, yet I was the only one that was fixated on. Does no one pay attention to the fact that, yeah, you can be alive, but it doesn't mean that you're living? So even though I'm alive, I'm never going to truly be able to live. I'm not going to have a good life. Like this is not the way that I want to be alive. And literally it took, my mother and I one day really having a heart to heart. And in that moment, in that conversation that, consisted about, 2 hours or so, what came from that conversation was the decision that JR made that I was going to practice gratitude. I was going to practice essentially kind of appreciating the micro, not looking at the macro. I was going to sort of forget about the long term, and I was going to focus on the short term. And that's kind of the opposite of what most of us are conditioned to do. We're always, thinking, what's long term? What does this feed into? And you sort of overlook and dismiss the beauty of this moment, the beauty of today. And for me, it was every morning when I woke up, I had to change my mindset and say, you know what is something that I could be grateful for? And I would find a lot of things, man. I would look at my hands and be like, you know what? My hands were like this when I was injured, but now I can straighten them out. Okay, cool. All right. Like I can kind of look up a little bit without my skin graft kind of pulling down. Oh, this wound isn't as open as it was yesterday. It's healing, and it's kind of the skin that the graft is taking. Okay. I can walk a little bit more today. There were so many positives every single day. And that honestly just kept me alive. And that gave me hope, just that simple mindset. And it's that restructuring of the way that I was looking at every single day in my mind, but my willingness to do that. And the reason, and honestly, that is literally still one of the most basic and most important things that I still implement in my life today, despite all the things that you mentioned at the introduction that I've had the opportunity to do. Yes, those are, there's bigger goals and bigger things you're paying attention to, but I never overlook the opportunity that I have to have a conversation with somebody, that experience I get to have in this moment, because I know there's something beautiful that I'm going to be given in this exchange that's going to allow me to continue to just, elevate and grow and make the most out of the life that I have, which is, I'm blessed, man, with the second chance at life. And I'm very aware that there are a lot of individuals, those in the military and those outside, that don't get a second chance at life. And I got it. For whatever reason, I got it. And so my motivation is, I'm not going to screw it up. I'm going to make the most out of this life, and I'm going to break cycles, and I'm going to be an example, and I'm going to try to share as much of the things that I've learned with everybody that I encounter, because while they're in their first chance at life, I don't want them to have to learn this the same way that I had to learn it.
They are. Holy smokes, dude. I wrote down like 20 things. I could write a book. I got like 5 books from that dissertation right there.
Well, let's write it, man. Let's write them.
Small is big.
Yeah, it is.
Small is big.
It is, man. And that's something that, I know we were talking before we went live in regards to, I got 2 kids, an 11-year-old and a 2-year-old, a daughter and a son. And my daughter plays, competitive softball, and I'm the head coach. And, I own that role because it's not just teaching them the game of softball and getting the most out of their athletic ability, is getting the most out of their mental ability. And for me, that is so important. And trying to, especially in such a pivotal point in their life, 11 and 12-year-old girls, when there's just so much going on in their worlds, and as they're navigating middle school and their image and aware of other things, conscious of other things around them. And for me, it's just like, hey, listen, no, we got to lean in. And somebody actually echoed to me the other day, and they said, what I really love about this team is how this team can be out of a game and you kind of think, okay, they're done. They're going to lose this game. And we're never out of a game. And I'm like, yes, because I'm always in those girls' heads in regards to, just understanding like a moment. Everything is about pressure. And when we feel that insane pressure on our bodies, we got to find a way to sort of shift that pressure onto something else. And I'm telling girls, focus on little moments. Okay, you got that out. Okay, you got that single. Or hey, you got a pop up. Or you know what? You grounded out to the infield. But guess what? You hit her. You hit that pitcher. The pitcher that was kicking our butts for the first 2 innings. Now you're making contact. You're seeing the ball. You're bending it. Eventually that pitch is going to break and it's going to open up for us. And now our bats are going to come alive. And just giving girls that little thing, right? It doesn't have to be a big home run. It doesn't have to be anything, sort of big astronomical event that takes place in the game. Yeah, there are those things that happen. But for the most part, it's all these little things, these little details that people overlook. And so trying to get kids to understand that now, so hopefully that can be something they can remember, whether they forget my name, whether they forget our team, whether they forget anything, they'll remember, hopefully, when life gets a little challenging, because it will. I should find something to be grateful for in this moment, in this experience. There's something that I can take with me.
JR, hang with me for a second. I got this crazy idea. Just hang with me.
Okay.
In the sport of softball, you could write a coaching manual related to your experiences. So when you were in the fire, there's no comparison to being in a fire and being in a situation where the other team's got bases loaded and they've already scored three runs and nobody's out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what the pitcher throws up there, they hit it. Okay. It's a fat ball every time and it falls in every time. That's the fire. But it's going to end. Right?
Yeah.
And then you've got the situation where sometimes you got to take a shower.
Yeah.
You got to do something that, you know what? Maybe in softball, you got to bunt.
Yeah.
You know you're going to get out, but you got to take one for the team.
Yeah.
For us to grow and move the runners around the bases, you got to be the sacrificial person. You got to take. You got to get burnt so that we can have a chance to win.
Yeah.
And I could go on because it's like your experiences. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but your pain has become your passion and it's become your purpose. And I want to go back to a couple points in time.
Yep.
First time I want to go to is the 5 minutes of hell.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes of being on fire, trapped. Where did your mind go? Did you have a spiritual moment? Did you have a fear? Did you have can you even remember what you were doing in those 5 minutes of fire?
Oh, I remember again, man. I remember it. And here's the thing. People are always like, is it okay for you to talk about that? I'm like, listen, I could tell you about those 5 minutes that were, so painful and traumatic, but yet I could tell you the story as if I told you last night, oh, like my family and I, we went out and grabbed ice cream. and is the flavor. Like, I mean, it's just that casual now for me.
Mhm.
And I've taken the power away from those 5 minutes, right? And I've been able to talk about it so much and work through it so much, not just verbally, writing it down, different practices, that I've taken the power away from it, that now allows me to sort of take the beauty from those 5 minutes. And here's the beauty. And I can only get to a place where I say, I honestly refer to that day as a blessing. I refer to that day as my rebirth, because I truly believe parts of me died on that day, which allowed room for the other parts of JR to be born. And so many of us are tied to an identity, to a thing, right? And to a moment. And, what happens if that thing, what happens, okay, my identity is tied to me being a parent. What happens now when your kids go off to college? What happens when your kids now, meet somebody and they start their own families, and now they don't need you the same way that they needed you for 18 years of life? What happens if the job that you've connected yourself to this job and to this position, and now all of a sudden the company folds? What happens if you're an athlete and you've been playing this sport your entire life, and now you're retired at 33 years old, which is insane, right? And now, how do you allow yourself to have a rebirth and pivot and sort of recreate that identity, right? And it doesn't mean you have to start over. And people always say this to me: well, you got to start over. Now I got to start over. And I'm like, you don't have to start over. And that's the problem. It's no different than when you see this catastrophe that happens in storms, and you see it on the news, and you see it on social media. You see a storm come through a town, through a community, tear the houses down. You see houses torn off. You see cars flipped over. But if you look at that house, the foundation is still there. It's still there. It's still solid. So the structure, like what we see, what we pay attention to, might have changed, but the foundation is there. So I wasn't starting over. And this is what I did for 5 minutes. And when I was in that Humvee, man, I was screaming and yelling at the top of my lungs. I was pleading for someone to please pull me out of this Humvee. And I could hear all the chaos happening outside of this Humvee. I can actually see through the front windshield guys running around, and there was just chaos happening outside of this Humvee. And in the midst of me screaming and yelling, I'm gasping for air because, again, I broke ribs, and so I can't really breathe. And so in the midst of me trying to breathe, not realizing, because I'm just trying to survive, I'm inhaling the smoke from the fire. And there were several moments over the course of those 5 minutes where my eyes got really heavy. Now, I know you said people can't see me right now, but I'll be able to see this later. My eyes would get so heavy, they would be on the verge of closing. And just think of it, and just imagine, all of us have done this when you're incredibly tired and you're somewhere and you're trying to stay awake and you're fighting it and you're fighting it and you're fighting it. And eventually that fatigue just takes over. And that fatigue took over and my eyes were closed. And there was something really beautiful that happened in those moments with my eyes being closed, is that there was silence. There was no more noise. There was no more chaos. It was just me with my breath. It was me with this thought of, I'm going to die. I'm going to lose my life in this way. My mother's fear is going to become a reality. And then I would tell myself, but you can't keep your eyes closed because you're giving up. Somebody's going to come. And I would just open my eyes and I would continue to scream and gasp for air. And I just continue that cycle for those 5 minutes. Now, of course, anybody going through something like that, they're going to tell you those 5 minutes felt like an hour, felt like 2 hours, felt like whatever. And that's true for me as well. But the beauty in that is, how many of our lives are so chaotic? Our lives are so busy, just so much noise, especially if you got kids, and especially if you got kids and activities. We got jobs. We got to find time to take care of ourselves. We got to feed these kids. We got to get them here. We got to get them there. We got to do this. We got to do that. There's so much that is constantly pulling us in different directions, and there's so much noise. But the one thing we don't do for ourselves is we don't find time to pause and sit still and pay attention to our breath. And no different than how I practice gratitude, I also practice stillness. I'm intentional with my stillness. I'm intentional now, like I'm in a stage of life where I'm home a little bit more now. And guess what I'm doing? I'm doing yoga. And not because it's good for me from a physical standpoint. It's good for me, a mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint. It's allowing me to reconnect with my breath when I have to do a pose that I'm like, this is so painful. And it's like, just breathe, just connect with your breath. And the more that you connect with your breath and you sort of take the mind off of what you're feeling and sort of focus on, the other feeling in the sense that you're alive and you're breathing, all of a sudden now that pose isn't as complicated, right? And so for me, I'm always finding time. And listen, people talk about meditation, and I love it, and it's great. I don't do traditional meditation where I sit and it just kind of doesn't work for me, right? My mind is still a little busy. And so I have to move. I have to go, and I go for drives. I go for walks. I just sort of connect with the world and what's happening around me. And I allow those beings and that energy from those beings to fuel me. And I take from them because it's out in the world. And I know that that's my way of refueling myself. And then once I'm refueled, now I can be that being in the world that is now distributing this energy that I have. And I think that's the key. So many of us are trying to just give, and do. And we're not sort of taking inventory of what we have, what we're capable. What's the bandwidth? What are we capable of giving right now? And so we're either not giving anything, and we're not even thinking of refueling ourselves. And you only identify those things, man, through stillness and through being intentional and being honest in those moments of stillness and silence. And it doesn't mean, again, that you have to be in a dark room, that it has to be no noise. It means that you're driving in your car. There's no music. There's no podcast. It means you go on a 5-10 minute walk. It means you sit at a park. It means you sit in your, living room, and there's just no noise, and just be. But be intentional about the silence.
JR, the thing that's bouncing around in my mind, especially when you're the coach of young girls that are preteens, is body composition, body image, social media presence, popularity. All those things are magnified at that age. And you experience something not the same, but similarly when you got the mirror in front of you in the hospital, because you knew you didn't look the same. You just didn't know how you looked. And then when you saw how you looked, you probably went, like you said, you went into a dark place. You became hopeless. You went on a downward spiral because this is not what you signed up for.
Yeah.
You wanted to use the military to go to college, get a free, get a GI Bill and go meet a beautiful girl and live your happy life. Yeah. And now you're thinking what you shared before, which is, I'm not going to get a wife. So all I'm wanting to do is kind of have you speak on what is it when it isn't like you thought it would look. When your image isn't what you were hoping it would be. And that speaks to everybody on the planet, but especially touches kids that are in that preteen teenage group.
Yeah. So, I actually do talk about this with the team, and, and it's not directly around this body image. It's more about how other teams perceive you, or, but it sort of brushes on it, because I don't want to make it so obvious that I'm like talking about this stuff, but essentially still giving them. And I think one of the things that for me, I just keep telling the kids, I'm like, listen, you're always gonna encounter somebody that's not going to approve of whatever. That's not going to like whatever it is. There's always going to be somebody out there. And what you have to do is you have to say to yourself, what do I feel about myself? And I was like, and that's being honest. And so I tell the girls, like, for example, when there's a stressful situation in a game, I'm like, shift the pressure off of you. And what you do in that moment is find 3 to 5 things. 3 to 5 things that you do well, 3 to 5 things that you love, like shift the energy, 3 to 5 things that bring you joy. Just focus on that. Take the brain somewhere else instead of, because the more that you marinate in that space, especially in this age, they just continue to sink, dig a hole, dig a hole, dig a hole. And I'm like, nope, shift the mindset. Like focus on what are 3 things that went well this game? What are, like just think of those things. And the more you do that, the more you take yourself out of this space, out of this rut. And now you can allow yourself to just show up. And the more that you show up, the more that you just show up, life is going to give you what you need because you're willing to show up. And that's something that I was reminded of recently, man. Literally a buddy of mine who, we met about 4 years ago when, we both moved to Austin area and we were neighbors, and about a month had gone by and I'd been reaching out to him, calling him, texting him. He hadn't responded. Then I'd see him post a story on Instagram, and you know how social media is these days. You're like, oh, but you can post on social media, but you can't text me back or call me back. Come on, man. What's up with that? And then,
No doubt.
And then one day I'm driving in the community because he moved about 10 minutes away. And another neighbor was like, hey, man, did you hear about what happened? And I was like, what? And he's like, he's been in the hospital for the last 3 weeks because some sort of illness attacked his immune system, his kidney. And I'm like, I had no idea. That's why the dude hasn't responded. And again, it just takes me back to that book, The 4 Agreements. And one of the things is stop making things about you. Stop taking things so personal, right? And I just went down this rabbit hole thinking man, what did I do? What did I say? How did I offend him? And so I reach out to his wife and I'm like, hey, I just heard. She's like, yeah. So I go visit him. And I go visit him and I just showed up, man. And literally what I thought was going to be maybe an hour and a half, just kind of cutting it up, not really talking about what's going on, just sort of distract the mind a little bit, really turned into a 6-hour visit where it turned into him and I really talking about life and our childhood and us as parents and fathers. And then he got discharged that day. So I was like, oh, dude, I'll drive you home. And I drove him home. And, and it was just, it took me back to 6 months after I was injured when I was asked to visit a patient for the first time. And I was an outpatient and this patient had just arrived. And I what makes me qualified? What makes me qualified to walk into anybody's room and to try to be uplifting? Why am I qualified? I'm 20. And what I realized, the key was just show up. And I literally just walked into that room, and that one experience literally started this trajectory that I've been on for the last 20 some odd years of me just constantly just showing up. And I think that's the biggest thing I tell these kids is just distract your mind, focus on other things. Focus on beauty, focus on things that bring you happiness, focus on moments of success, things that bring you joy, and just continue to show up. Because the more that you show up, you're going to now be surrounded and encounter the things and the people that will validate you, that will give you what you need. And so, it's, again, one of those situations where you're like, okay, how much is that going to resonate with these kids now? And it may not. But it's going to be maybe 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and I'm going to be one of those individuals in their journey that shared something, similar that, hopefully it'll get them out of a space they're in.
I would like to ask you about your book and your mission here in a minute, but I'd be remiss if I didn't share with you something that is a component of Pro Mindset, which is my mission and my purpose, and that is that everybody has a story. Get you to where you're at. You have to sometimes reframe your story, rewrite your story to get to a different place. Mm-hmm. Everybody has standards. And in those standards, it's your process and it's all these things. I don't want to go into detail on that. The last one is, how do you perform on stage? How do you show up on stage? What is your stage? And when you're on stage, are you going to allow the external to influence the internal? Yeah. And so one of the concepts that I came up with here in the last year or so is the concept of a performance bubble. And so if you would share with your team the concept of, okay, this week we've got a big tournament coming up. Let's say it's practice. I want you guys to be thinking about the things that you want to bring to the game with you. And I only want you to bring a backpack. So you can't bring a couple suitcases and carry on and everything else. We don't have room for all that. So in
Tell
this
my
back,
wife that. Tell my wife
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I love the story of the dude that's got a backpack that's navigating through the airport swiftly, and the dude that's got a wife and a couple kids and a couple baby seats and baby chair, all that stuff, and it's like he can't get anywhere. Okay, he's moving about 1 inch per minute. But anyway, in the performance bubble, you bring your dedication, your commitment, your belief, your confidence, the work that you put in, what you did the last time you played this team that went well, the encouragement you got from your parents, your teammates, your coaches, all that positive stuff. And I've got a laundry list of things. And it's a bubble. So there's certain things that don't get to come in. And that is what happened the last time when you struck out against this pitcher. What somebody said that was negative to you about your game, about your dedication, about your body, about your energy, about anything. And any negative thoughts you have. And you have to fill that performance bubble with the oxygen of belief. So every time you take a breath, you believe more in who you are. Now, your confidence about what you do is going to fluctuate depending on the day or the week and what situation it might be. And you might be asked to hit opposite field and you don't feel really confident about that, but that's what you need to do to move the runners, whatever it might be. And if you could just create your own version of that performance bubble so that your team could, when they step in the batter's box, they're stepping into their performance bubble.
Yeah.
The noise, the distractions, the past failures don't get to come with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I love that, man. I love that. And I think, when you talked about, your stage and how do you show up on your stage, and I think that's one of the things is that, to me, what I hear, and I frequently talk about is like when, there's a lot of conversation about leadership, right? And so many of us put emphasis on leaders are those individuals that like you have your platform, I have my platform, the person that's the boss or the supervisor or the CEO or the public figure, they are all leaders, and you fail to look at yourself and understand that you too are a leader. And the people that you influence, it may be a smaller sample size of people, but nonetheless, it starts with your family, right? Your kids, it's whoever's in your home. It starts with your friends. Like if it starts with your circle, it goes to your job. Like you have the ability to influence, and it's all about modeling the way. It's all about how do you move through these spaces. And I think another thing that people, and I feel like I just did this past weekend with my team where I had to, listen, it wasn't one of my proudest moments. I disagreed with the opposing coach. There's a history there where I disagreed with his approach in regards to him trying to uplift his team, and he kept yelling things out that kind of put down our team and our players. And he's just like diminishing like what they had done. Oh, it's only because of this and only because of that. And I just didn't like that. And then I didn't feel like he showed good sportsmanship when one of our kids was hit by a pitch in a batter's box. And so I kind of unfortunately brought that into this game when we played them. And then, of course, in this game, there were some things that he was doing that just really kind of annoyed me. And at the end, when, all teams go through the line and shake hands, good game, good luck, whatever, he was the last one, and I didn't shake his hand. And I just turned and walked towards my dugout. And he says to me, "Hey, what's up with that, coach?" He's like, "Respect the game." And of course, because I'm carrying this and I'm bringing, that's what I'm packing in my backpack. And that's what you got to be careful too, is like, what are you putting in your backpack, right? And I brought that nonsense in my backpack with me. And of course, I got in his face and I was like, "Oh, I respect the game. I don't respect you." And it turned into this whole back and forth. And his other coach came up and I was like, "Trust me, I respect this gentleman. I respect this coach. I don't respect you because of this is the way." And so afterwards, and mind you, we lost that game. And it wasn't that I cared about the loss. For me, that's fine. Our girls, we got to take those losses. But when we huddled up and I was like, first of all, not all losses are the same. There's some where like, man, we failed to show up. We didn't have we made too many errors. We made this, we made that. There's a learning curve. But in this case, this loss to me was like a victory because of this and this and this and this. And I said, but before I get into all that, I need to apologize to you guys. And I said, whether you saw it or not, it turns out half of our kids didn't even realize what happened. But I was like, it didn't matter. I need to come to you and say, you know, when coaches tell you all the time that there's things you got to work on, well, guess what? That applies to your coach as well. And I apologize. And I think more people have to be willing to be vulnerable and say, hey, my bad, I messed up. And not be worried about, are you losing control of people? Are people not going to respect you anymore? No, that, in my opinion, in my experience, that's going to allow the people to say, that's the person I want to rock with. That's the person I want to follow. So yesterday I'm doing damage control, man. I'm calling all the parents and I'm like, hey, just want to explain.
Don't fire me, man.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, man, are you kidding me? Like, first of all, you didn't have to call us, but thank you for calling us. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Like, and honestly, that's why our girls have committed to come play for you, because you care about the kids and not so much about the, like, and again, we're a competitive team. We're a good team, but to be able to show that with the kids and allow them to say, man, it's okay to say, my bad. It's okay to have a moment where you sort of go backwards. And I'm going to use that backpack analogy and that power bubble because it is so true. And I used to say early on in my speaking career, I used to talk about how, and all of us like to get on a plane and go to a destination. And what do you do when you get to that destination? You're like, I'm going to buy this souvenir, buy that souvenir. And then all of a sudden you're back in the hotel and you're trying to cram it into the suitcase. And then you go to the airport and you weigh it and they tell you, oh, that you're going to have to pay $150 because you're overweight. Meanwhile, they gave you 50 pounds, but somehow you're overweight. And it's like, but the key is those people, when they left their origin, their home, they took too much. They didn't leave room for them to be able to pick up some things in this destination or along the way and bring it back with them. And so, you know, I think that is one of the things that I'm constantly trying to practice is being a role model where I can say, hey guys, I made a mistake, my bad. And I'm going to show up tomorrow and try to be better. And I think when kids see that, and that's what I do with my kids. I mean, listen, my daughter is 11. And I could tell you probably since she was 4 years old, I would have these conversations with her. Like if I lashed out or if I got upset with her about something, or if I kind of allowed a lot of my past trauma, my youth and how I was trained or the way that I looked at things, whatever triggered me and I took it out on her, I displaced it on her. I'd pull her out of school the next day or the same day. And I'd be like, hey, I want to explain to you. I'm sorry. I was wrong. This is why I did it. I'm not saying it's right. I just want you to understand where I was coming from. And I'm telling you, I think my daughter respects me so much more than just because I'm her dad. She respects me because I do show my imperfections. I do tell her that, man, today's just a tough day for me. I struggled today. And I think if more of us are willing to show up that way and not afraid the way people are going to use it against us or perceive us, I think you're going to find yourself building that much more of a community. And honestly, there's a reason why I've been successful in the different spaces that I've navigated. There's a reason I go on Dancing with the Stars and I compete. When I joined dancing, man, there was, probably 15 people that knew me. And there were all the 15 people that watched soap operas. Outside of that, everybody knew all of the other contestants because they had names, they had credibility to them. And there's a reason why I was able to win that season, not just simply because of my dancing ability, but because people connected with my willingness to be vulnerable and share that sort of like humility as well, and just be humble and you know, and people connect with that, man. And so, you know, it's a really great position that I get to be in right now. Because I didn't have that growing up. I mean, I had the mindset as a kid that played sports. I had the typical coaches that were like, you know, tough it out, you know, just essentially drill sergeants just in sports. And yeah, there's a time and place for that. But there's also a flip side of this. And for me, it's practicing compassion, understanding how to have empathy for these kids, understanding how to, you know, talk to these kids, pull them aside. What's going on? I got a kid crying to me the other day and I'm like, hey, it's okay. Let's talk this out. And now that kid goes and dominates the rest of the day at the tournament. And it's like, you know, being able to shift and kind of have that ability to sort of balance as much as you possibly can. That's the special stuff, man. That's when you're getting into that special sauce that everyone, will pay $1.50 for that extra little container of that sauce because that's the good stuff.
Amen. Can I have your permission to give you a perspective on the youth coaching?
Of course, man. Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
You already
love
given
the fact.
me.
I
Listen,
love
when
the
I
fact.
become a New York Times bestseller because of these 45 books that we just created ideas from. Like I'm gonna have to give you royalties, man. Some of it's coming back to you.
All right, brother. Well, here's the thing. I love you being vulnerable. I've had many of those kind of situations, unfortunately. But I just want to kind of share with you a perspective that, once your kids have been through it, you see it differently. And just like compared to when you were in it, the rehab, compared to now, your perspective is night and day. You today go, God, I had to go through that. Yeah. And, I took these small steps forward almost every day. And then I had some days where I went backwards. But those were good too, because then I had to dig deeper. I had to be more passionate, more committed to my recovery. Well, I'm on the other side of the youth coaching business. And the thing I can share with you is that if you set it up from the beginning, that it's about being our best every time we get an opportunity. When you're at bat, when you're on the bench supporting your teammates, when you're in the field, if you're pitching, catching, it doesn't matter what position you're playing, it's about being your best, being focused, doing your job, all those things. It's not about winning.
Yeah.
Winning happens from doing your best. And when you run into a Goliath, sometimes you're going to get your butt beat. And you know what? That's still a dub because you played your best.
Yeah.
The game. So every single game you play, you're going to fall into one of four quadrants. You're either better and you win, or you're better and you lose.
Yeah.
Better and you lose stinks. Because you're like, wow, what did we do wrong? And why did we make these decisions? And why didn't the kids show up? Then you have the two situations where you're not as good on paper and you lose. That's not bad because you weren't supposed to win. And the sweetest position to be in is when you know they're better than you and you whip their butt.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But in all four scenarios, all you can control is being your best.
Yeah.
So the objective is being your best. And the second thing I would suggest, and keep in mind this is wisdom of coaching youth sports for too many years, cross-train every one of your girls.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So if you got a tournament, hey, you're playing shortstop the first game, you're playing left field the second game.
Yeah.
Get them out of their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Because what'll happen is they may be better at a position that you wouldn't have put them at. And when you have injuries during into the season tournament, you got lots of options.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would do is I would have them bat in different orders.
Yeah.
Because everybody that bats number 9 thinks they're the worst. So guess what they do? They perform the worst.
Yeah.
They're told by everybody, you're batting last because you're not important. So guess what? When they get in the batter's box, in their performance bubble, they don't have confidence. Yeah. They don't have belief. They got excuses ready like, hey, I just grounded out to the pitcher.
Yeah.
So I'm sometimes going to put my best hitter last.
Yeah.
And my worst hitter first.
Yeah.
See what happens.
It's funny you said that because we did that in one of our tournaments recently where we shook up the batting order because one, we were just flat and nobody was seeing the ball. And we were, and you were early, your just mechanics were off. We were trying to do too much. And so coach and I were like, hey man, let's shift it up. Let's shift it up. And one of the things that I've done is with those in that 8-9 hole, I'm like recalibrated the way they look at it. And I'm like, you got to change the way you look at it. This is the way a lot of people look at the 8-9 hole. I say, but I want you to look at it as you're like a leadoff for 1, 2, 3, right? Like you're going to get the opportunity to get on base. I mean, you're like, and it only matters at the beginning of the game. After that, it's like you could literally be the leadoff, and now you're equivalent to like the number one hole, right? Like it's so getting my 8 and 9 who maybe stay in that spot pretty frequently, getting them to take pride in the fact that, oh no, like I may start the game here, but as the game goes on, I could literally be leadoff one inning, or I could be in the 2-hole, in the 3-hole, in the inning. And my job is to just perform and get on base and hope my teammates, no matter where they fall behind me, will bring me in, and I'll be, and so I got my 8-9 hole that they're just like, all right, cool. Like they're like, all right, cool. And we moved some girls around where we had some of our better hitters and they were down in the batting order. And it was like, hey, we need to shift this because we're trying to shake things up, and it worked. And, like, I'm always like, it's funny because like I'm always in these girls' heads, man. And I was literally telling them, one of our games when we were the pressure, and I sort of use this analogy of like, most of us have played ping pong and the balls just travels back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I was like, but think of that ball as that's pressure being shifted. And I was like, this team is shifting the pressure onto us, and we feel it, and I get it. But this is how you shift that pressure back to them, is you don't allow a moment of an error, a moment of, maybe they had just a good half inning, whatever. You don't allow that moment to become permanent. You don't allow that moment to sort of now essentially kind of tell the story for the entire game. How are we going to shift the pressure back? And it's so cool, man. Like, because girls really process that, and they're like, okay, yeah, all right. Good for, and I was like, give them credit. They got you. They got it this inning. It's okay. Next inning, it's our turn, right? Who's to say that can't happen? And so these girls, they don't have time. I don't really give them a lot of time to go down that space and sort of spend too much time feeding the mind false narratives. I allow them to like get out of it and know that now the next inning is your opportunity to now shift that ping pong back to the other side of the table, shift the pressure back to the other team. But it's cool, man. I mean, I definitely agree with you in everything that you just shared, because that is something that we do quite a bit in practice. Like, I don't care if you play infield most of the time. I don't care if you play outfield most of the time. You're going to flop. You're going to get reps. And pool play, you're going to get reps in all of them because of all the reasons that you covered. And yeah, man, I mean, it's funny because like, people ask me like, what do you like to do, JR? And, outside of, when I used to love I used to love running, and my body's kind of spoken to me recently and be like, maybe you should kind of chill for a second and kind of heal all these other areas to your body before you start trying to pound the pavement again. But the one thing that I can honestly tell you, and I had a conversation with this guy once, and he was older, his kids were grown, and he asked me, what does JR like to do? And I was like, man, I love coaching my daughter's softball team. And he says, okay, that's great, but what do you like to do for you? And I was like, I understand what you're trying to hint at. Like, that is me still giving. But again, my willingness to show up, those kids give me so much. And I truly love seeing each one of them, not just my daughter, but have these moments where things click for them and greatness happens for them, and to see the joy on their face. And that fuels me, man. Yeah, it takes a lot out of me, but it also, they give me the game and the kids, my team, they give me so much back that I never feel like, that's why I could talk about this for hours. I mean, we could do 2 more hours of just talking about softball and coaching these kids because of the joy that it gives me. But I'm so grateful. And that's one of the things I keep pinching myself, that how grateful I am to be in this position in my life right now, that I get the honor to do that. And my daughter actually enjoys me doing it, because that's the other key. I could have a kid that is like, yo, okay, can you just like be a dad and just like sit outside the fence? She actually still enjoys right now.
Well, one of the things that I see is 2 schools of thought. One school of thought is, man, it's a time commitment. It's a lot of work. You're dealing with drama queens, all these kind of comments. But what you just shared is so true, is you get to experience life with a group of people. You get to be involved more intimately in your daughter's life as she grows up, and you get to learn how she's going to respond to adversity, unfairness, competition, comparison. All these things are going to prop up in a game.
Yeah.
And if you just dropped off at practice and then came to the game and we're talking on your cell phone behind the dugout and not paying attention, you wouldn't even know how she might respond.
Mm-hmm.
And it also gives you a little bit of a sneak preview of what her strengths and weaknesses are so that you can coach her through some of those weaknesses so she handles herself with boys and authority and people like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's definitely, one of the things, my daughter is a little bit more quieter, a little bit more of an introvert. And my son, the 2-year-old, he is an extrovert. Like, we potty trained him recently, and this is how much of an extrovert he is. He's out in public and we go somewhere and they say hi to him and he's like, "Hi, I pee pee poo poo in the potty." and they're like, "That's great. Yeah, I pee pee poo poo in the potty." And they're like, "Okay, good for you. That's great, buddy." He's the extrovert. He's going to be, I tell my wife all the time, he's going to be the one we're going to have to be careful. He's going to go to friends' house, sleepovers, and tell them everything that goes down in this house. Our daughter, she'll take it to the grave with her, whatever happened. But my daughter, I'm always on her about like, hey, you got to like learn how to use your voice. Use your voice. Use your voice. Learn how to speak up. And it's I think through this sport, she has found her voice. She has found her ability to be vocal and understand that, okay, I don't always need to speak. I don't always need to be verbal, but when the opportunity presents itself, I can be. And so it's allowed her as a young lady to feel confident in her voice and to find it and to know how to express herself. And I'm like, listen, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? And I'm constantly learning that. And as a teammate, it's not what you say to your teammate, it's how you say it to your teammate. And that's a lesson for all of them. So there's just so many cool things, man. Like, so many cool things. I mean, it's talk about leadership. I mean, godly, you're constantly, having to mobilize 11 girls that are coming to practice or to a tournament with God knows what in their backpack. And you're having to get them on track because you have a common goal. And the goal is to win this championship, right? Win this tournament. And you have to deal with the emotions. You have to deal with, and so anybody that's in a leadership position, I think that's one thing we realized since 2020 is that, the days of where you just expect people to just show up and do their job. And I understand the theory behind that. And I get it, especially the old schoolers. I get it. But at the same time, there has to be, again, a balancing act where you are allowing yourself some room and some space to connect with the people that are on your team, that work for you, and say, hey, you good? I just want to check in. Like, you need anything? Like, what you need to talk some things out? And the more that you can create a space for people in that regard, I think you're going to get so much more out of those individuals because they're going to respect your willingness to actually show up for them when they needed it. And, so I get to practice it every day, man.
JR, one thing I learned is they do as you do, not as you say.
Mm-hmm.
Even as a dad, as a coach, I just looked at our clock here, and we've had a great time. You're right. We could do about 3 or 4 of these interviews before we actually talk about what we were supposed to talk about. Why don't you share with our audience in a final comment 2 things? Your mission from writing your book, like what's your message in writing your book, and where can they find you if they want you to speak, if they want to check out your book, those types of things.
Yeah, well, thank you for that opportunity. So I would tell you this, you mentioned earlier how everybody has a story. And I remember when I was around 23 years old, I was on a plane and the man sitting next to me, his name is Leslie, and we were having a conversation, and he said to me after I told him a little bit about my story, and he said, your story is your story, but what is your story? And I'm thinking to myself, I just told you, like, what do you mean? And I was like, man, this guy's like, he's not getting it. And he said it again. And for some odd reason, it just stayed with me, man, for years. It just stayed with me. This man kept saying, your story is your story, but what is your story? And finally, one day when I was able to turn the corner, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and I started to kind of have like this little bit of awakening and have a little more clarity, because there was a dark period after I left the hospital as well. Trust me, it wasn't easy. I'm sure a lot of people know that, but I just wanted to say that because I don't want people to think it was only the beginning months of my injury that was difficult. No, there was about 5 years that was difficult. And I realized, I know I have a story, but did I know my story? Did I know how the moments that I know, the moments that were powerful, that could be impactful to myself and to others? Did I know that? And then I started to realize, oh yeah, your story's your story. Yeah, you got a story, but what is it? Do you really know the power of your story? And again, that only comes through stillness. That only comes through time. That only comes through really being honest with yourself and pausing and reflecting. And here I am. I'm like now, I'm 40 now, but this is about 38 years old. So this is probably 15 years after I saw that man on the plane. I'm in Atlanta airport and I'm going to the rental car and I hear JR. And I turn around and it's him. And he's got this big smile. And I look at him and I said, your story is your story, but what is your story? And dude, he lit up and he was like, you remember that? I was like, dude, that has kind of been the basis of everything. Like, I'm always like, what is my story? And so the reason that I wrote this book is because, one, I wanted people to understand how I overcame what I overcame, my injury overseas in the military in Iraq. It's not just decided like all of a sudden one day I just decided to be resilient. No, resiliency is something that I had been working on for 19 years prior to that moment. There was all these moments that kept happening to me, challenges, traumatic events, whatever, victories, that all was part of my foundation. So when the house was burnt down to the ground on the 5th of April of 2003, it was okay because I still had my foundation there. And that foundation is the thing that I always have to do, an inspection on and make sure there's no cracks, make sure there's nothing wrong with the foundation because I'm still building on it. And so the book is just more in depth of stories of different things that I've experienced over the course of my life. And I think that people can really connect with a lot of those experiences. And as far as where people can find me, man, I encourage people to hit up my website, jrmartinez.com. Hit me up on social. I am JR Martinez. Listen, I just hope people feel compelled enough to reach out to just continue the conversation that you and I have had today, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. And just thank you so much for the opportunity for, allowing me to just connect with your viewers, your listeners. It's been a pleasure to be here, man.
I really appreciate it, JR. I gotta speak to that. Your story is your story, but what is your story? It's the difference between the what and the how. Yeah. It's the difference between, yes, you have a story. We all have a story. But what is the purpose, the power, and the impact of your life and of your story?
Yeah.
That's more important than your story.
Yep.
And it's the moments before the moment that got you ready for the moment. And it's the moments after the moment that have defined you from that moment. Mm-hmm. And I think that too many people that have suffered a lot less trauma and a lot less injury than you have are still stuck on the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not on what their purpose is from the moment.
Yep.
Right.
And listen, man, again, we can do this all day long, you and I, but I will say you also, when you find out what the purpose and the impact, when you find out what that is, then the challenge is always staying true to that and operating from that place. Because I've made the mistake where I've forgotten about that. And I started chasing the monetary. I started chasing the acknowledgement, the recognition of being at the top of my game. And guess what? I no longer was having an impact. I no longer was fulfilling my purpose. And I had a rude awakening. There was a period where I lost everything and I had to have a rude awakening, and I had to get back to, this is why life has kind of punched me in the gut and said, hey, where we forgot. And I went back to my purpose, and I know that I always operate from that place because I understand my impact. All the other bonuses, it will come. I just have to stay true to who I am. And that's a challenge for everyone as well. So listen, I know I could do this all day long. We could do this all day long, but I want to be mindful of your time and your viewers' time. So, but again, man, I love it. This was great conversation. This is one of those conversations that just fuels me and gives me, just that extra pep in my step and gets me motivated, man. So I really appreciate you sharing that energy with me, even though it's through a screen. It's good energy, bro.
JR, thank you very much. Hang on here. Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.